What should Jets fans be watching for over the final 4 weeks? Can Zach Wilson turn his career around? Can Aaron Rodgers return? Can this team still make the playoffs? All that and more today on Locked On Jets.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Tuesday, December 12th, 2023, and I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Thanking you so much for making the show your first listen or first watch every day. If you enjoy the show, subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts so you'll get new episodes as soon as they're posted. If you enjoy the show and are listening on the podcast source, give it a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube, give this episode a big thumbs up. This helps us out and helps other Jets fans find the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Well, the Jets are coming off a win, and today we're going to talk about how that may or may not have reset expectations for the rest of the season for this football team. This week feels a lot better than the previous 5 have because, again, the Jets won a game. I don't think it was just about the Jets losing over the last 5 weeks. I think it was how they looked, where the offense just looked so inept week after week after week. You know, it's tough enough to watch losing football as a fan. It's never fun to watch your team lose a game, but I do feel like it's different when you're watching your team maybe lose a shootout versus watching your team struggle to cross the 50-yard line, as the Jets had done during their 5-game losing streak and all season long. The Jets with an offensive outburst that came out of nowhere. And I mean, it really came out of nowhere because it's not like they came out of the gates flying. They scored 0 points in the first half. It looked like your typical Jets game where the defense was playing very well, but the offense was not. And of course, the star of the game was Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson, who already has been benched by the Jets once this year, has been benched, I think, technically 4 times by this team over the last 2 seasons. He comes back and has maybe the best game of his career, throwing for 301 yards, 2 touchdowns, looking very decisive, looking very good. How have things changed for Zach Wilson? Well, I think number one, he's going to start playing with more confidence heading into Miami. You know, I think it's one thing to believe you can do it. It's another thing to be coming off a game like that. And I think the couple of weeks he had on the bench probably did him some good. You know, I think it's in a situation like that, sometimes it's good to be able to clear your head, to be able to not have to deal with the pressure, with the crushing nature of a defeat. And I think maybe Zach Wilson came back a little bit mentally refreshed. And Jets have talked about that through the years, how they're, you know, sometimes they want, in the past benchings, they've hoped it would be a reset for Zach Wilson. In this case, it may have actually been a reset for Zach Wilson. And then, of course, the story that came out last week that had him as the center of attention about how he maybe was reluctant to go back into the lineup. Again, I think very understandably so. You know, maybe that gave him a little extra motivation. So how do things change for Zach Wilson now? Well, I think it's always important to never overreact to one game, because, you know, you never can judge a player on his best week. You can never judge a player on his worst week. Most weeks you get the real guy. Most weeks players give you something between their best and their worst. Zach Wilson still has a long way to go. And I'm really happy for him that he played as well as he did on Sunday against Houston. But I don't think we should lose track that this is still a young quarterback who needs a lot of work. And I actually went back and watched Zach's throws in the second half on film last night before I did this show. And I kind of understand why he had the success he did. I think the Jets did a good job in a couple of areas. I think that they did a better job of utilizing their play calling to make life easier on him. I think there were simpler reads that you saw. A couple of the big plays they made were off play action. I think there were a couple of times where they used motion effectively as an indicator to show, give Zach a tip and make his decision making easier pre-snap. There was a lot the Jets did that they haven't been doing, because the Jets, you know, near the bottom of the NFL in play action rate and motion rate heading into this game. So I think the play calling improved, and it was in the second half because the Jets were not aggressive in the first half. The first half, outside of a kneel down to end the half, you know, when the Jets got the ball back with like 1 second left, The Jets ran the ball 70% of the time in the first half on first down. So it was still a conservative game plan when they came out of the huddle. The second half, 11 passes to 6 runs before garbage time. Well, the game was within 2 scores on first down, 11 passes to 6 runs. And I think that aggressiveness also helped the Jets out, because when you throw on early downs, especially when a defense plays the Jets, they're expecting a run. So when you throw, it makes life easier. Throwing when the defense is expecting throwing when the defense is expecting run makes it easier on the quarterback. And there were also some outstanding plays by Zach. Again, I think the mental reset helped him, because there were moments where he just instinctively doing things, where he's just making plays out there. There was the one pass to Garrett Wilson where Mekhi Becton gets beat off the snap. Zach successfully engineers the spin move and then throws an absolute dart to Garrett Wilson. A spectacular play by Zach. And there were a couple of schoolyard football plays. And then there was also just the Texans playing really bad defense, where, there were a couple of times that I think Zach missed a read, but it didn't even really matter because the next guy in the progression was still open. So, give the Texans credit for playing some really lousy defense. So what's this all mean for Zach? Well, with Zach, he's got a stack of games. We've been here before. Maybe we haven't been after a game this good, but we've been here before where he's played a good game. But what's always come with Zach is a bad game to follow. He hasn't been able to stack good games. I think more than anything, what's on the line is Zach has a chance to extend his Jets career in a way that maybe was not possible 2 weeks ago. I think it was a foregone conclusion that Zach Wilson was getting traded in the offseason. If Zach goes out and plays well again this week, and he continues to play well over the course of the rest of the season, I think there's a possibility the Jets may just say, hey, let's give this one more shot next year, and Zach will be the backup quarterback when Aaron Rodgers returns. I think we need to be realistic. You never want to overreact to one game. And I think there's a real danger in doing that when your quarterback looks as good as Zach has. When a quarterback's been as maligned as Zach is, some of it fairly, some of it not. Zach Wilson still has a really long way to go as a quarterback. He's still a guy who kind of struggles when you ask him to get deeper into the progression. But I think it's clear that he's better than he was a year ago. I kept saying that while he was in the lineup, that, even though the numbers did not reflect it, I do think he was playing quarterback at a higher level than he was last season. And I think you probably saw a little bit of that on Sunday. I think there were plays on Sunday he made that he would not have made a year ago. But there's still a long way to go. There's still a lot of reps he has to go through. In fact, you know what? I've been saying this, if the Jets move on from Zach, I think he should just go somewhere he can play, even if that means drop into the CFL or the XFL. It's not that he can't get a quarterback job in the NFL, but I just think he needs reps more than anything. So if the Jets hold on to him, well, obviously those other things won't be an option. But I think the Jets next year, if Zach Wilson's still here, Zach Wilson should be the quarterback for the entire preseason. He should be the guy who takes all the snaps in the exhibition season, because more than anything, he's going to improve if he gets more reps out there. And I think that the next 4 games can maybe help him in that area, because the Jets should just use these games as developmental time for Zach Wilson, time for him to get more experience under his belt, get used to some of the defensive concepts teams are throwing out there. When the Jets drafted him, he was just really, really raw. He was not experienced. He was not ready to be an NFL quarterback. And I think you saw that in the results the first 2 years. I think the results that are a little bit better this year show that he's starting to pick it up. And I think experience is doing him well. So Jets you just need to keep giving him playing time. Next year, when he's back, he should be the quarterback for the preseason. And I think that these next couple games, I would bring him back anyway. I've said that I think that his Jets career is on the line the next 4 games. I don't know that I would get rid of him. I think you just keep working with him. I understand he was the second pick in the draft. I understand there's all this frustration in the fan base with how he's played, but I think I would keep him. But I think what the Jets will do, the Jets will probably use these next 4 games as the test to see whether they will keep him. So I think that's what's on the line for Zach Wilson, the quarterback who's improving, a quarterback who's, even though with a great performance on Sunday, is not there yet. I think the Jets are kind of in the mindset, let's see what happens in the next 4 weeks. For me, I'd keep him, though, and I'd just keep trying to give him reps. And I'd keep playing him. Now, I know that there's another quarterback who's rumored to be returning to the lineup for the Jets. That's Aaron Rodgers. I still don't think it's a great idea. I still don't think it's going to happen this weekend. As we continue on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Jets, I'll go in a little bit more detail on that. I'll explain why I think this may be not the right idea for the Jets, and I'll explain why I still think it may not happen. That's ahead as we continue this Tuesday episode. This episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Gametime. You should not have to worry when you're buying tickets to the next big event. Gametime's the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantees, Gametime takes all the guesswork out of buying tickets. You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show you the total up front, so you're getting a great deal without hidden fees. You can buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps. I've used Gametime myself. It's a great app. I've used it for sports. I've used it for theater. Really simple, no extra steps. Some of the other ticket platforms make you jump through hoops. Gametime doesn't. It's just a couple taps, and you've got your seats, and you can find amazing deals. It's the winter. It's December. It's cold. Maybe you want to go down to Miami to see the Jets this weekend play the Dolphins. Well, Gametime will find great last-minute deals for amazing seats. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. It's LOCKEDONNFL, one word with no space, for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jets your first listener or first watch every day. A big shout out to everydayers. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets. We have new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. And in addition to Locked On Jets, you should know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. And today on Locked On Jets, we're talking about things to look forward to over the final 4 weeks of the season. Can we look forward to Aaron Rodgers returning? That's the question. So a report came out yesterday that the Jets are going to clear Aaron Rodgers for the Washington game, 2 weeks from now. But the report was from TMZ Sports, so I don't know what to do with that. There's been all sorts of rumblings about this. For months, we've been hearing the rumors that the Jets want Rodgers to return to the lineup Christmas Eve against Washington. And, I'm still a little skeptical about this. I know, he seems like he's on his feet, obviously. But, you hear him, and I'm sure we'll get another McAfee update today. So the bat signal will go up and Rodgers will be on the McAfee show and we can hear whatever he's got to say there. But a couple of weeks ago, he said a couple things. He said something that struck me. It's like, as of 2 weeks ago, he was only running with like 70% of the weight on the injured foot on the treadmill. And, even if it gets to 100%, when you're running 100% on the treadmill, that doesn't necessarily mean you're ready to play in an NFL game. And not on McAfee, in another interview, he said that, if I play this year, I'm not going to be 100%. And to me, that's the signal that you shouldn't be playing. And that's the signal that, this whole idea may not be that great. I get that, he wants to set a record. And look, medical technology has come a long way. I mean, I'm not saying that Achilles is always going to be a season-ending injury. I think as science progresses, they'll find ways to cure these things quicker. And maybe Rodgers has found one of those things. But, I mean, just based on what he's saying, it doesn't sound like he's 100% yet. And I don't really understand what the motivation would be to put him on the field if he's less than 100% at the moment. If you're the Jets, in fact, I'd almost say on a team with a good owner, this wouldn't even be an option. The owner steps in and says, we're not putting you on the field unless you're 100%. We don't want you to get re-injured, because the Jets obviously have designs on this thing working next year. It hasn't worked this year because of the injury in part, but the Jets are expecting Rodgers to be back next year. It sounds like Rodgers is going to play again. Now, of course, he could always surprise us. Aaron Rodgers has been known to change his mind, but this season's pretty much lost. And we're going to get to that. We're going to get to why the Jets are probably not going to make the playoffs in a few minutes, but this is not a situation where the Jets are right in the mix. See, I think that there would be a temptation if the Jets were really close to the playoff race and maybe they were holding the 7th seed, or maybe they were in the 8th spot and out on a tiebreaker. At least then, maybe I could see some motivation behind it. But really what you're risking, it just doesn't seem like there's much of a reward for what you're risking. And I know Rodgers has downplayed the idea of what will happen if he gets re-injured. And I know it's been done in the media, but I just don't understand why after this process where he's had to rehab, where he's had to try and get himself right. I mean, I get why he'd do it. He's a great competitor. He's an all-time quarterback. You don't become a legend the way Aaron Rodgers has become without thinking you can do the impossible, without trying to do the impossible, without proving everybody wrong. I get it from his perspective. But from the Jets' perspective, I mean, what are you gaining out here? This team is 5-8. This team doesn't have an offensive line that can protect Rodgers. And I got to tell you, like watching the Zach Wilson film last night, I actually don't think the offensive line was any better. I think Zach Wilson made some amazing plays. I think the Jets called some good plays to kind of mitigate some of the issues they were having. But I don't think this offensive line's any better. And Rodgers, coming off an Achilles, he's not going to be able to move at all. I mean, I think even if he's somehow healthy enough to play, even if he's cleared, that's different from being able to say he's going to be able to move. And he's because 3 months off an Achilles injury, maybe he can get on the field. He's not going to be able to move at all. And this offensive line is just it has leaks all over the place. And I don't think you want to risk him getting re-injured, because then you're spending another offseason of rehab. Then you're spending, the offseason where he could be like getting back to 100%. The offseason where he could be himself again heading into 2024. He's going to be rehabbing again if he gets injured. Maybe I'm not guaranteeing he's going to get injured, but I think it's clear, his own words, I won't be 100% if I'm playing. Why are you putting him out there less than 100% under the current, given where the team is right now? And the other aspect of this is that, with the season probably lost, I go back to what I just said in the first segment. I think these reps could better go to Zach Wilson. Let Zach develop. Zach needs reps. And if Zach's going to be the backup quarterback next year, then I think he'll benefit from playing these final 4 games. I think he'll learn, because for a quarterback like Zach Wilson, the only way he's going to learn is by playing. And there aren't really going to be a whole lot of opportunities going forward. You'll have the exhibition season next year, but then Rodgers will be back under center. If you get into another situation where Rodgers goes down next year and Zach's got to go back in the lineup, you want Zach to have as much experience under his belt as possible, because that's how Zach's getting better. That's how Zach improves. I get why they're trying to do it. And maybe it's just maybe they're just trying to keep the fans interested, but you can't put a compromised 40-year-old quarterback on the field. This just seems like a recipe for trouble. Again, there are no guarantees in life. I'm not guaranteeing he's going to get injured, but I don't think I've seen anything that suggests he's going to be 100%. I don't think I've seen anything that suggests he's going to be fully healthy. And I think for a quarterback as important to a team as Aaron Rodgers is to the Jets, he shouldn't be on the field unless he's 100%. He certainly should not be on the field if the games aren't important, if the games aren't significant. And yes, I know the Jets won. I know the Jets are still mathematically alive for the playoffs. And I kind of hate to do this to you, because I know you're probably really excited for the Jets win, for the Jets beating the Texans this past Sunday. But I had you on the Locked On Jets podcast. The Jets playoff situation is bleak. Even with that win, if the Jets win out, I still don't think they're going to make the playoffs. And we'll go into that in more detail as we continue this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Jets podcast. This episode is brought to you by DoorDash. We're at the start of the week still. It's only Tuesday. You had to go through Monday. Now you have to go through the second day, and the week's still not half over at the end of today. I think you've earned a nice meal. Check out DoorDash. You can have a Dasher deliver an incredible meal from one of any great restaurants in the New York area or wherever you live. For example, Blue Ribbon Sushi Soho. It's on Sullivan Street. It's an impressive selection of pristine sushi and samshi, of course, made with seafood that's flown in daily. And platters come in a range of sizes to serve the whole family. But don't pass over that extensive menu of appetizers, where there are plenty of gems to be found. And you should know that there's a great deal I can give you if you decide to order DoorDash. You can get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. Subject to change, terms apply. Again, that's a 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. It's one word with no space. LOCKED number 2 number 3. Subject to change, terms apply with DoorDash. This is the Locked On Jets podcast. On this Tuesday, we're talking about things to look forward to the rest of the way for the New York Jets. We've talked about Zach Wilson. We've talked about Aaron Rodgers, how maybe we should not be looking forward to him the rest of the way. We could look forward to him in 2024, though. And part of the reason I think Zach should continue to play and Rodgers should not return to the lineup is where the Jets are in the standings. Now, listen, a very exciting win over the Houston Texans on Sunday, but I don't think we should lose track of the big picture here. And the big picture is that the New York Jets are really not in the playoff race right now. They're only mathematically still alive, but this is a 5-8 football team, and they are in 14th place in the AFC. So you need to get to 7. They're at 14 right now. That means they have to jump 7 teams in 4 weeks. That's a lot to do. And part of the problem with this is it means that like the 7 teams in between you and the playoff spot, that means none of them could go on a winning streak. Because if any of them go on a winning streak, you're finished. So you have like 7 teams, none of whom can, and if one of them is on a winning streak, then one of the top 6 in the conference needs to completely collapse. You can see where this begins to become difficult, but it gets even tougher for the Jets because of the 7 teams they need to pass right now, 5 of them are 2 games ahead of them. So that means the Jets need to make up 2 games with 4 to go on 5 teams. It's just an awful lot to need to happen. And the other aspect of this, the part that might be the most difficult, is any consideration of the playoffs begins with the Jets winning all 4 of their remaining games. So the Jets, who have won 5 games so far all season, now need to win 4 in a row. I mean, it's a lot to ask. And, the quality of this football team has just not been high this season. This team has, and again, I understand they did a great job against Houston on Sunday, but you do have to remember this team is in 14th place in the 16-team AFC. That's the course is 13 games. That's a 13-game sample size versus the 1-game sample size we got on Sunday. The Jets have the 3rd worst, in addition to being the 3rd worst in the standings, the Jets have the 3rd worst point differential in the conference. And on top of that, they've lost to the 2 teams that have a worse point differential, the Raiders and the Patriots. So you're asking this team to string together a 4-game winning streak. Against, of the 4 games left, you have two games against teams that are really good. You have a game against Miami, who is not going to look past the Jets because the way they collapsed last night, first of all, and second of all, the Jets won. So this is not going to be a trap game for Miami. The Jets are probably going to get a really good effort from the Miami Dolphins this coming Sunday. And after that, they get Washington. Okay, well, Washington's not that good. Maybe they can beat Washington on Christmas Eve. But then you got Cleveland, who's got a stifling defense. And despite what we saw from the Jets on offense on Sunday, I mean, this is still not a very good offensive football team. And I don't think you can expect them to continue to play that well on offense. They're going to go up against a really tough Cleveland team that's 8-5, a Cleveland team that right now is in 5th place in the AFC. And then you close with New England, and look, they should beat New England the last week of the season, but I don't need to tell you how much the Jets have struggled. And they can't stumble anywhere in these 4 games. I mean, I think I hate to be the one that like brings everybody back to earth on a day like this, because I know everybody's still excited about the Jets winning. And look, I'm excited too. I think the Jets can finish the season strong. I think that there are things to look forward to between now and the end of the season, but can the Jets win enough games to make the playoffs? I mean, getting to 9 wins, and look, if they lose 1 game, they're out. The Jets are probably going to lose 1 game along the way. Asking this team now to suddenly go on a rip off a 5-game winning streak, I don't know that's realistic, especially because, look, it's not like the Houston performance was like dominant from start to finish. The defense was dominant from start to finish, but the offense just kind of like came out of nowhere in that second half. So it wasn't even like the offense really found something the whole game. It was maybe they caught a little lightning in the bottle in the second half. And I'm not trying to take credit away from this win for the Jets. I'm just trying to explain that, this may not be all that sustainable. But even if the Jets win out, again, they have to jump so many teams in the standings. They've just run out of time to do it. This season was lost during the 5-game losing streak. That's really where this season fell apart. And it's probably too late to save it. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's just the way it is right now for the New York Jets, a team that's in 14th place, a team that's 2 games out of the final playoff spot with 4 to go and needs to jump 7 teams. It's just bleak. It's just not going to happen in any likely scenario. I think right now the Jets, I've seen a couple simulators. Jets have odds under 1% to make the playoffs. And even if they beat Miami, their odds only go up to 1%. So it's just not a situation where it's likely to happen. And look, I don't want to sit here, and the reason I'm telling you this, I don't want to sit here and like give you false hope. I mean, if I sit here and tell you the Jets have a great shot at making the playoffs and it doesn't happen, you'll be mad at me, and rightly so. I think we need to explain the situation the Jets are in, and it's just not a very good situation for this football team right now, unfortunately. Anyway, that's all for today's episode. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. As always, if you enjoy the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. If you enjoy this show and are listening on a podcast source, give it a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube and enjoy the show, give this episode a big thumbs up. It helps us out. It helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Have a great Tuesday, everybody. Send in your mailbag questions. Tomorrow we will do our weekly mailbag show. Can't wait to do that.